in 1965, I heard that the Rolling Stones were coming to Rochester, which was outrageous because, no one ever thought that they would come to a second tier city like Rochester when they were playing all the big, big cities. But they did. And so I was having dinner the night of the concert. And when dinner was finished, I asked my mom and dad if I could go with some friends to hear the Rolling Stones. And when the concert was over, I would be right back. And they looked at each other and kind of looked like, "What, are you kidding me or something?" And then they turned to me and they said, "Absolutely not." I says, "But Dad," I says, "that's an awesome band." I said, "I may never have a chance to hear them again." He says, "Louis, if you were a little older and you were a little more responsible, you could go with some friends of that age. But at 15 years old," he says, there's too much going on there that could end up getting you hurt or in a lot of trouble. The answer is no." And I pulled my chair back from the table and I says, "That sucks," and I stomped off to my bedroom and talking to myself and shouting, what a bum deal that is and stuff. I got out to my bedroom and started changing into my jeans and my Madras shirt and a black denim jacket. So when I was all dressed and stuff, I had a little bit of money in my pocket, and I started breathing real slow and deep. And I opened my bedroom door, and it was in September, so it was still a little warm out. So the front door wasn't closed, the front door was open, and just the screen door was latched. So I ran down the stairs, ran towards the front door, hit the screen door, the door slid open and hit the back of the house and slammed again. And I was running down my street towards a main street that would lead to the War Memorial. And as I was almost down to the end of the street, I heard, "Louis, I'm gonna kill you." And I knew it was my dad, and I started laughing. And then I stopped laughing because I believed he meant it. So I was a little worried, but I didn't stop. And when I got to Spencerport Road, I stuck my thumb out, and the first car that went by picked me up, and it was about 3 or 4 other kids going to the concert. I had a friend, a lady friend, who was very cute and had her blonde hair cut just like Brian Jones. So I got to the concert, I met that cute girl and 3 or 4 of her friends, and they had the tickets, and we went in, and we started to enjoy the concert. It was rowdy. It was rowdy, but it was rowdy like any Stones concert would be, because Jagger was inciting the audience, and the kids just ate it up. So all of a sudden, the chief of police walked up and took Jagger's mic off the stand and started walking up to the front of the stage. He said, he says, "It was not easy to get the Stones to come here, but we did it. We got them to come here, and the place is sold out, and they're playing all the hits. Isn't it what you guys wanted?" And they're all going, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." He says, "Then why are you acting like little school kids?" He says, "This is a momentous occasion for Rochester, New York." He says, "And you're blowing it." He says, throwing things and screaming and shouting through their song, not when it's done, through the song. He says, "I'm so disappointed in you, I don't know what to say." And then he says, "Well, I do know what to say. This concert's over." And he put Jagger's mic back on the stand, and the concert was over. All the lights went on. The road crew started tearing down the equipment and stuff. And you could see Jagger and the Stones pissed off, in the back of the stage. And then they left for the dressing room. So this Brian Jones' little girl, her name was Kathy Evans. And we went for the side door that led out into that alleyway. And that's where the Stones had their limo waiting. So there are about 15 or 20 other fans out there and security. And one by one, the Stones ran out and waved to everybody and got in the limo. And the last one in was Brian Jones. And I remember hearing Kathy screaming, "Brian!" And she runs up and throws herself on top of the trunk. Just as the limo driver puts the car in drive and does this, kind of pulls away with a little and she goes off the back of the trunk onto the ground and hits her head hard. And I hear I see the limo lights stop, and Brian gets out and runs over to her, and it kind of helps her halfway get up and ask her if she's all right. And feels the bump in the back of her head, and it says he thinks she'll be all right, and it helps her to her feet and gives her a kiss on the cheek, a hug and a kiss on the cheek, and then ran back to the car and they took off. And she was in heaven for the rest of the night. The friends that we came with, one of her friends' parents were away for the weekend. And we went over and stayed at their house and drank and ate and had a lot of fun. And then I looked at the clock and it was 2:15. And I told my dad I'd be home by 12:30, 1 o'clock at the latest. I had no ride, and I didn't have enough money to get a ride. So I talked to Kathy, and everybody pitched in all the dollars and change that they had till I had a big thing of change and maybe $5 or $6 bills. We called a cab, and the cab started driving me back to my house. And I knew how much I had. I think I had $7 and about 75 cents. And as we were about 2 miles away from my parents' house, I could see the meter hit $7.75. And I didn't know if I should say something or not, but so I didn't say anything. And he pulled down the street. I told him the house is right here. And he said almost $8. And I says, I only have about $7.50. I said, I'll give you everything I have. I just don't have quite enough money to pay the bill. And he sees all the change and stuff with a couple of $1 bills. He goes, I don't want that. He says, you keep it. Have a good night. So I stuffed it all back in my pockets. And I went up to the front door and I had my key. I was going to unlock a door and it was already unlocked. I thought, wow, this is strange. My dad doesn't need the door unlocked. So I went in and the whole house was dark. I shut the door and I locked it. I thought to myself, my goodness, can it be that I made it without any trouble? So I took 2 steps going up the stairs and the light behind me goes on. And there's my dad sitting on the sofa in the living room. And he goes, Louis. And I go, oh, hi, Dad. Like, what's wrong, He says, I hope you had a lot of fun at the concert. I says, oh, Dad, it was so awesome. I did. My friends were there. We met a lot of other people who I knew who went to the concert. It was all, I didn't tell him anything about the trouble, And he goes, well, that's good. I'm glad you had a good time. He goes, because I want to let you know, you are grounded at least for 3 months. He says, no activities after school, no activities on the weekend, and you don't leave the house. I says, 3 months? Dad, come on, really? I said, that's horrible. I started walking up the stairs slowly with my shoulders hunched over, and I got in the room and I went, all right, because that didn't mean anything to me compared to seeing the Stones,